Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Sources in Tehran say the crackdown on protesters has been intense over the past week. State media, however, shows a calm situation as the internet shutdown enters its fourth day and over 500 people are reported killed. India and Germany exchange MOUs from defense to skills as German Chancellor Friedrich Merz arrives in India for his first Asia visit. Iran's supreme leader posts a message comparing US President Donald Trump to past tyrants who were overthrown. Ayatollah Khamenei says arrogant rulers never last, in a veiled warning to Washington. US President Donald Trump says Iran has reached out to negotiate after his threats of military action. He says the US military is reviewing very strong options if protesters continue to be killed. Jerome Powell says the Trump administration threatens legal action against him to gain influence over Federal Reserve interest rate policy. A top Republican senator warns the move undermines Justice Department credibility and vows to block future Fed appointments. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung meets Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi in Nara as Seoul balances ties with Beijing and Tokyo. The talks come amid rising China-Japan tensions with a focus on US-Japan-South Korea cooperation. French far-right leader Marine Le Pen begins a crucial court appeal in Paris that will decide if she can run in the 2027 presidential election. She is currently barred from public office after a conviction from misusing over €4 million in funds. US Ambassador Sergio Gore says Washington and New Delhi continue active trade deal negotiations with another call set for Tuesday. He says President Trump and Prime Minister Modi can resolve differences despite strained ties over tariffs and Russian oil. All right, viewers, let's start with some news from Iran now, where Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the situation is under total control following days of nationwide protests, even as activists report a rising death toll and a prolonged internet shutdown. The comments come as US President Donald Trump says Iran has reached out to negotiate after he warned of strong options, including possible military action over the crackdown on demonstrators. Iran's top diplomat has blamed the violence on foreign powers, while the government called pro-regime supporters into the streets in a show of force. Chants against the US and Israel were broadcast on state television. Meanwhile, activists say more than 500 people have been killed and over 10,000 detained since the unrest began. Iran's internet blackout has now lasted more than 84 hours, further limiting information from inside the country. I now welcome Dr. Emmanuel Navo, International Relations Lecturer at Tel Aviv University and Senior Fellow at Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security in this discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Navo, for joining me here. Doctor, what's your assessment of Khomeini's statements when he says that those behind the protests are influenced by foreign powers, or foreign powers are leading this protest inconspicuously?
Well, we all know that Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, is lying. He's lying like every dictator on his last leg. He knows that the Iranian people is fighting for its freedom, and this, of course, has nothing to do with the United States or with Israel. It's just a people trying to get its freedom back and fighting legitimately, and he's shooting at them, and that is the truth.
He's also saying, in fact, Iran is also saying its foreign minister has issued a statement to say that situation is back to normal. Can that really be believed when US rights group are saying more than 500 people have been killed?
Nothing can be believed and nothing should be believed coming from the Islamic leadership of Iran. We know from different sources of information that there are a few hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens who've been killed by the regime. And we've seen images of rebellion also throughout the world. A very strong image has been, of course, the image of this Iranian taking down the flag of the Islamic Republic from the London embassy, the Iranian embassy in London, and putting the flag, the previous flag of the Iranian regime. So we know that the situation has been boiling for many days, and it's far from being back to normal.
In how long do you think US is going to make a move in Iran?
I don't think the United States government is going to disclose, nor should it disclose, the timing of its planned operation. But I do think that the United States, having made a very clear statement in support of the Iranian people, should act on that statement, because otherwise it would affect its credibility, and it would also affect the will and the courage of the Iranian people to fight for its freedom. So I don't know, of course, when the United States is going to act. I don't think they should disclose when they intend to act, but they should act because President Trump committed to it, and his credibility and that of the United States is in the balance.
Now, Israel has also issued a statement saying that it's on high alert. What actions is it expected to take should the situation deteriorate further?
Well, Israel's measures are defensive at this point. It's been threatened by Iran, threatened of retaliation if the United States acts against the Iranian regime. So Israel is taking every necessary measure to protect itself and to protect its citizens. Of course, the Iranian leadership, the current leadership, would and demonstrated its technological and military superiority over Iran in the previous round of conflict in June. And so that would be a terrible mistake from the Iranian leadership. If they decide to do so anyways, Israel will know how to protect itself.
Going back to Iran, do you see it ready to transition to a democracy?
I think the Iranian people has been very clear about the fact that it no longer wants to live under a theocracy. It is for the Iranian people, of course, to decide which type of regime they want to choose. It is their decision whether or not they want to restore the monarchy, install a constitutional one. It is for them to decide. But what is very clear is that the Iranian people has proven in its majority that it no longer wants to live under a middle-aged type of theocracy that has taken back their great country many, many centuries backward. But again, it is for the Iranian people to decide which regime wants to live under.
All right, Dr. Navon, thank you very much for your comments on this.
Thank you.
And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on. China has reacted strongly to recent remarks by US President Donald Trump on Iran, saying it opposes any form of foreign interference. China's foreign ministry said it rejects intervention in the internal affairs of other countries after Trump warned of possible military action if Iran kills protesters. China urged all sides to act responsibly and called for steps that support peace and stability in the Middle East. Let's listen in.
中方希望伊朗政府和人民能够克服当前的困难，保持国家的稳定。我们一贯反对干涉别国内政，一贯主张各国的主权和安全都应当受到国际法的充分保护，反对在国际关系中使用武力或威胁使用武力。我们呼吁各方多做有利于中东和平稳定的事情。
Meanwhile, Germany has sharply criticized Iran's crackdown on protesters. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, speaking during his visit to India, said Iran's use of what he called brutal and disproportionate force shows weakness, not strength. He condemned the violence in the strongest terms and demanded an immediate end to the repression. As protests continue inside Iran, global pressure is growing. I now request Dr. Navon to join me back in the discussion here. Dr. Navon, of course, condemnation is coming in. All right, because I'm told Dr. Navo has left the conversation for now. Uh, but those are the latest details that are now coming up. Uh, Protests against the Iranian regime are being held outside of Iran now. We've seen demonstrations being held in US, in Los Angeles, in London, in the UK, in Berlin, in Germany, and very powerful visuals have come out from protests in London, where outside the Iranian embassy, some demonstrators climbed atop the building and took off the Iran flag and replaced it with the flag of the old regime. And with that, we are now going to proceed. Viewers, let's tell you some more information as far as China and US are concerned over the Greenland issue. China's position on US claims over Greenland has been reaffirmed by the Chinese Foreign Ministry. According to the report, spokesperson Mao Ning said that relations between states must always be handled in accordance with the UN Charter. The comment was made in response to recent US statements suggesting military action to seize Greenland, with the US described as necessary to protect national security and counter China. However, China's stance emphasizes diplomacy and adherence to international law, calling for disputes to be resolved peacefully without threats or unilateral actions. I requested retired Major General Dr. Roger Kochar to join me in this discussion. He is a senior strategic and international affairs expert from New Delhi. Thank you, Dr. Kochar, for joining me. China has issued a statement to call for abeyance to the international rule of law, but it has not responded to Trump's claims that if the US does not acquire Greenland, China or Russia will.
Thank you, Kriti. See, China has got large stakes. First, you have to understand the entire geopolitical scenario before trying to understand what China is trying to make this statement. Consequent to the global warming, Arctic Ocean has become a very, very important strategic area, and why I'm actually saying it is because of the melting of the snow. Today, Arctic Ocean is accessible from the northern sea routes. Russia has got a substantial presence here in terms of its northern fleet in Coral Islands, and China has been sending its ships on regular basis to explore the seas there, because there is a lot of untapped resources. So what happens if Greenland gets taken over by America? The Chinese movement here is going to get stalled, and China does not want that to happen. So China is now resorting to invoking the UN Charter. So now, what does it imply? China is trying to stress that the principles of sovereignty, non-interference, territorial integrity. Now, China is wanting to come on to the world stage now, trying to suggest that China is a very responsible nation and it understands what sovereignty and territorial integrity mean. But at the same time, if you see the track record of China, I think it's double standards here, because in the Indo-Pacific and the South China Sea, China does not follow this at all. We have seen this how in the exclusive economic zone in Philippines, we also seen Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands in the South China Sea, which China has forcibly taken. Then we have also seen that China keeps on stopping all economic activity in the South China Sea, which is in respect to the other countries. So United States has to carry out freedom of navigation drills in this region. So I think these are double standards. China is trying to make a bold statement here on Greenland because it actually affects its own interest, and core interests of China are in this region, because in the times to come, the future strategic importance of this region, and it's in the backyard of America. So America would also not like, as you rightly said, America has made a statement that in case we don't take Greenland, then China or Russia may take, because Greenland, you see, is a large island, very centrally poised in the Arctic Ocean, and has a very less population, around 59,000 people only stay there. So I think if we observe the Chinese statement from the point of view of a strategic content, and from the point of view of what China has an interest in this region, I think if we take that into that context, this statement will become very, very clear.
Sure. Now, as far as the negotiations are concerned, how do you think Trump is going to have a peaceful conversation with Greenlanders, because they now also want not to be called as Danes or Americans? Do you think Trump will be able to offer them a lucrative proposal that they will accept?
A very good question, Kriti, because I think Trump is now going to go a whole hog. He's not going to stop in between now, because he understands now that importance of Greenland. So I think he's going to offer them a very, very good deal. He may even suggest leasing of the entire area to the United States in lieu of a large amount of benefits. And you know that Greenland is not secure as far as the defense is also concerned, because Denmark takes care of the foreign policy and the defense. But that is not a very, very strong area where Denmark can make a difference. Here, Americans can make the difference. Economic and prosperity of the people of Greenland, I think America can assure that and ensure that. And Trump will go actually short of taking over Greenland by force, which I think Trump would like to avoid at this point of time, because Venezuela has happened and things actually haven't stabilized in Venezuela as of now. Things are still, on the brim, and Trump has not been able to fully seize the control of Venezuela, with Rodriguez also making all kinds of statements contrary to what Trump wants to hear. So I think Denmark is going to be a calibrated move. It will not be a sudden move. And Trump will offer a large number of incentives to Denmark to be able to win over the people there. And I have a strong feeling that this would be the likely course of action Trump may adopt.
All right, sure. And if he does go for military use, what does that say for NATO's future?
Trump, if you think in terms of NATO in this post-Cold War times, NATO is slowly losing its relevance, because none of the other countries of NATO have that kind of a military might to contribute to what America actually wants to see. So from Trump's eyes, I am seeing one thing, that he does not regard NATO to be a very great alliance any longer. But at the same time, I don't think Trump would like a disintegration of NATO, because other benefits are there to Trump, because if he has to tackle Russia and China nexus, and also North Korea, he needs alliance like NATO to back him all the time. So I think they may resolve within the NATO itself, because Article 5 is very, very clear, and Denmark has also called for intervention of the European Union forces to counter the US military. So that is also going on, but I think within the NATO, they should be able to resolve this issue.
All right, Dr. Kochhar, thank you very much for this discussion. I request you to stay on as we move ahead. Because the United States is also pushing for faster global action to reduce dependence on China for critical minerals used in defense technology, energy systems, and advanced manufacturing. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is hosting finance leaders from the G7 and key partner nations, urging them to move with greater urgency on security alternative supply chains. The group represents about 60% of the global demand for critical minerals, yet remains heavily reliant on China, which dominates refining of rare earths, lithium, cobalt, and graphite. Washington says progress since last year's G7 summit has been too slow and is pressing allies to follow its lead through domestic production and new supply agreements. I request Dr. Kochhar to join me back in the discussion here. Dr. Kochhar, a very crucial statement and exactly can be placed in context of Greenland because, of course, this is an Arctic island with rich reserves in rare earth elements, and which is why Trump is eyeing the island, making many say that this is the most sought after real estate at this point in time.
You're very right, Kriti. See, what is happening here is that the future supply chain weaponization is going to take place in terms of rare earth elements, and these elements have total domination of China today. 80 to 90% of the rare earth market is with China as of now, because all these minerals and these elements are available in China. They are available in Myanmar, on the northeastern side of Myanmar, where Chinese companies are doing the mining. So now Trump, through the G7, he's making an appeal because these rare earth elements are absolutely indispensable for the defense systems, for your missiles, for your jet engines, for your munitions, for your radars, your turbines, electric motors, and you name it. So this dependence on China, Trump would like to reduce. So he's calling upon these countries like Australia, Canada, Japan, and the European Union, and also potentially India also, because India also has light rare earth elements in our own country we have. So I think Trump wants to create an alternative. It will take time. You see, you mentioned Greenland also, because you first have to have the mining infrastructure available, and that mining infrastructure itself will take 10 to 15 years to establish by the time you start on this rare earth element. So I think it is a future strategy, not in the short term, but in the long term, yes. This dependence on China has to reduce, and he is also planning, Trump is also planning expanding funding of the Defense Production Act and the Inflation Reduction Act within his own countries, and the chips related authorities. He would also build up, I think, on a time horizon of at least 10 years from now on, and he would like this to be expedited and create that kind of infrastructure in times to come. Because you see, what today is happening is that the weaponization is taking place either through tariffs or through oil or energy, because that is the current sources of weaponization, and in times to come it's going to be the rare. So whosoever is going to control this critical resource, he's going to dominate the world, or he's going to rule the world. And Trump does not want China to get this ascendancy. So therefore he is making an appeal for all these like-minded countries in the G7 to come up with an alternative to China as far as the rare earth is concerned.
All right, Dr. Kochhar, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. And viewers, let's move on to cover some news from Australia, where Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has recalled Parliament early following the deadly Bondi terror attack, moving to fast-track tough new hate speech and gun control laws. Both houses of Parliament will sit on January 19 and 20, weeks ahead of schedule, to push through a sweeping omnibus bill. The proposed legislation seeks to tackle both extremism and weapon access introducing a national gun buyback scheme and strengthening anti-vilification laws. The government says the measures are aimed at preventing hatred from turning into violence. The bill also includes plans to toughen bans on prohibited symbols, create new offenses for inciting racial hatred, and give authorities greater powers to cancel visas linked to extremism. A new two-step gun licensing system is also proposed, using intelligence checks to screen applicants and their families. The Commonwealth has committed to funding the gun buyback scheme jointly with states and territories. Parliament will also mark the session with a condolence motion for the victims of the Bondi attack in a rare show of bipartisan unity. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.